Hello, my name is Tuvia Katzman, and I'm giving the class today for Tsama Nafshi. And first, I wanted to know right now, since I'm the substitute, if there's anything else that people wanted to learning instead of this, just because right now it's, even if I take over, it's not going to be an exact continuation of what Rev Furst was doing. Do you have any? Okay, yeah, say we could. That's one of the things I want to do, but that's longer. That I was thinking of something. But if you want to do the Rambam, I suggested the Rambam last Mishnah in Makos, because that's one of the basic things that's a little bit shorter. If you want to do that, but first let's get through. Where was he holding right now? Where did he get to?
Simcha.
Yeah. Okay, Simcha. Okay.
Very long.
Yeah. Okay, here, where are we holding?
This is Peliotz, I guess.
Peliotz. So Peliotz is sort of he's explaining just some sort of overview of Purim. And from the best I understand, you have to know what are you doing? You have to have some sort of overview of what you're doing. You're lost in the details of the day. You can get lost in the details of the day and just sort of forget yourself. A person can enjoy himself because of a nice meal, or enjoy himself because it's nice running into people, enjoy himself because he got a little drunk, and you got to know you have to know what you're doing, because we're doing Avodas Hashem, and we're doing Avodas Hashem with in Purim. It's a different Avodah than we do most other days. The biggest change in Purim, I think, is the drinking, because that's something which we normally don't do. We drink, Kiddush. The other type of drinking maybe is Leil Seder, and some of us feel a little bit woozy at the end of the Seder, but that's the...
You drink more in the Seder than you do in Purim, therefore.
Some do, some don't. Some feel... the more I think talks about Rabbi Yehuda, that he felt the wine from Pesach until Shavuos. So that's... But here it's Chayv English liv sume before you. Person is obligated liv sume. Bosim is lashon in Hebrew spicing. So a person is
inebriated.
Well, it says spice himself up. Now, how do you understand liv sume? It's actually it's an argument for the poskim. Should I be using more Hebrew or English, or it doesn't matter?
I'm writing down as I hear words I don't know, so I'll stop and ask.
No, I'm asking for your sake and also for the... In other words, I'd rather use a word and then explain it, because there are certain things you should know, just because people, when they're speaking English, are going to use these words anyway.
That'd be great. The more I hear,
the
better.
That's what I want. That's what I want to know. On the other hand, I want to know if I'm speaking to the camera, and I want to know if I have to be careful in that also. Okay. Anyway,
thank you.
The question of Litsume of Purim, it's a machlekes poskim. I presume you saw that in Mishnah Berurah. There's a machlekes about how much you're supposed to be drinking, and there are different extremes. There's one opinion that you're not supposed to drink at all. You came across that?
No.
Rabbeinu Ephraim, Talmud of the Riv. The Gemara, when it talks about, brings the Maimer Chayv Inish Litsume before you. So right afterwards, we bring the story of Rabbah and Rav Zera. You remember the story? Yeah, and the end of the story is that Rabbah shechted Rav Zera.
Yeah, he was scared he was going to do it again or something.
No, before we get to that, at first he shechted him, but at the end he managed to do Tchias HaMesim on him. He managed to resurrect him. And then he invited him for next year, and he said no thanks. There was a risk for next year.
Yeah, we heard that.
Yeah, okay, you can see the Gemara on the inside. I'm saying it over on the outside.
No, we're with you.
I don't want, obviously, this is slightly, we're dealing with one of the Amoroyim, we're dealing with very holy people who probably have overcome their Yetzer Hara for Ritzicha and such things.
Didn't you hear the Perush once that what do you mean by shekel? He told him sodot of the Torah, secrets of the Torah, until he couldn't take it anymore. And you know.
Park Nishmaso. Okay,
Yeah,
Pesach.
yeah.
It's very difficult to allegorize that much. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say it. I mean, but
I
some
came
people
across
do.
that one.
I'm sure somebody said it. And what you have to know is, I mean, if we're dealing with the Amoraim, or, I mean, these are people who have worked on themselves. I expect that they don't have any Yetzirah to murder people. They don't have any Yetzirah to kill people. They're very likely even to work on their Yetzirah of Tas, which is the Yetzirah. I mean, Tas and Gaiva, the Yetzirah are the. Should I try to translate?
What's Kas?
Anger.
Anger.
And what's the next one you said?
Gava,
Gaiva?
pride, arrogance.
Gaiva, pride, arrogance.
The Rambam brings the two bad meters which everybody has, unless it's worked on it, and you have to really, really work on these two, are anger and pride. Those are the ones, I mean, there are other things, everybody has their own bad meters, and everybody says, oh, good meters, I mean, I'm not saying that, but everybody has their own bad meters that they have to work on, and it's an individual question, everybody's different. But anger and gaiva is something everybody's work on, but one could presume that Rabbah and all the Amoraim worked on themselves and weren't holding by doing this. So that I think you can be certain. How we ended up doing it, I don't know. That you can say things. I'm a little bit afraid of allegorizing to take away the pshat. The pshat is like what? But okay. At any rate, Rabbeinu Ephraim, Talmud the Rif, explains the Gemara that right after Chayav Inish Liv Sume, is that good? Chayav Inish Liv Sume, it says, it brings this incident, and he understands that it brings this incident to say that that this mimer is not lahalacha, that we don't paskin Chayav Inish Liv Sume because you see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's Rabbeinu Ephraim. He's brought in the different Rishonim.
Thank you.
He's brought in the different Rishonim. Yeah. Okay.
This is done.
That's one opinion. I mean, the other, there is a Ramo says he used to be Yotze by sleeping. I think the Yad Ephraim says that that what it says Ad Velo Yoda means Ad Velo Ad Bechlal. I should translate that probably.
Please. Ad velo.
First, Velo Ad Bechlal.
Velo ad. Bichlal.
Okay, what does that mean? In other words, first what it means, Chayv Inish Liv Sumeh, a person obligated to, let's say, spice himself up. I mean, there's a question of how drunk that is in the first place. Whether this means you felt a little bit of the effects, or whether, I mean, these are Adelo Yoda, being Or Haman and Baruch Mordechai. But what does it mean, ad? So it means until. So he says there's such an expression, ad velo ad bichlal. Whenever we have a question of you have to go from one place to another place, that means up to, does that mean to that place and actually being there? Or it means up to that place but not getting there? And the second side of that would be ad velo ad bichlal. It means up to the place, but not actually getting there. In other words, a person is obligated until he is besume, but not actually to get there. Up to but not including. Okay, is this clear? Okay. So that's. I mean, there are different opinions as to how much.
I'm talking about drinking. How much we should drink.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, there. I have my own personal suspicions. I wouldn't call them shatim necessarily. That, you know, Purim is the time when Nishkas Yain Yotzi Sod, and when you drink, you're giving yourself an opportunity to lose your self-control and let the true self come out, and hopefully, and that's a risk, obviously. I mean, anybody who's ever gotten drunk knows there's a risk that in the true self which comes out, might be not exactly what I like. And we're running that risk, and hopefully what comes out is good. If we've been working on ourselves in order to create a nature, let's say our second nature, of being good people who want to keep the Torah and do the Ratzon Hashem. So here's the big chance now that we've gotten drunk, is what comes out somebody who wants to be an Oved Hashem and is maybe frustrated that he's not doing enough.
What's Oved Hashem?
A servant of Hashem.
Servant of Hashem.
And is not doing enough, or is what going to come out that deep down inside he hasn't really worked on himself at all. And that could be that's a useful secret to know about yourself, which you might not know and by getting drunk once a year you can find that out. Where are you really holding? I mean, you see that there are people who get drunk, and when they get drunk they start interfering with the buses in the street. They start acting like idiots, or some of them even get very obnoxious, and
their true self comes out.
I'm sorry to say it. That's they're telling us that's their true self. When you come out like that, you're a very wonderful person, except when your true self comes out, and that's
Even before then, the fact that they are drunk, that's already saying something.
No, but getting drunk. I'm saying that once they get drunk, I'm saying that that's the test, because then you're letting the true self come out, and you're letting other people know, and you should let yourself know what is your true self, and that's a very important thing for Avodas Hashem, to know yourself. I remember hearing Rav Wolbe Zatzal speaking very, very often about how people don't know their true selves, and
oh man,
yeah, and that's one of the things that happens when Purim is when something comes out. Surprise! That is your true self, because if you thought your true self was you sit in the basement, you look like you're really a big bastard. But when the true self comes out and you turn obnoxious, then or whatever,
then who are you?
Then who are you? And it means you got to start working on yourself. And it's useful information. You can't. Rav Wolbe said it's a primary. It's a very important thing to know in your Avodas Hashem, to know what your milas and your chesronos are, what your good points, what your bad points are, and to know who you are. And in Purim, that Nixas Yain Yotza Sod, the wine goes in and the secret goes out. You understand? I mean, they bring it as a gematria. Yain, what's the gematria of Yain? Sod, okay. They're both 70. And that's, but the sod is, besides the gematria works, that the yayin works, and the sod comes out, and then you find out what you really are. And sometimes it's very good. I've seen cases where it was unbelievable what came out. I remember once when I was by one of my rebbeim, who was son-in-law of Rabbi Berman Zatzal, and one of the bachrim who was by him was drunk, and he was rolling on the floor, and he was screaming about how he loves the Rosh Yeshiva, and he loves the Rosh Yeshiva's shirim, and he kept going on and on about it. And this is what he was screaming about with a hoarse voice, rolling on the floor, literally rolling on the floor in drunkenness. This was coming out. And I mean, this can happen. And it's known. I mean, cases where people all of a sudden who never spoke up and were very quiet, suddenly they got the courage and started to say the wine gave them the courage, and they started saying drushes, and started saying divrei Torah, and they started saying pearls. I've seen it I've seen it happen. And people who were involved in kiruv and worrying that they're not doing enough, and worrying that they're not coming through, and worrying that people aren't picking up what's really in their hearts, and people. I've seen it happen. I've seen you look in the streets and you see people who are just getting obnoxious. It can happen. They both can happen. And you have to know that for your Avodas Hashem. I mean, you have to know, as part of being an Avodas Hashem, you have to know where you're holding, and what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. You have to know yourself. Rav Wolbe Zatzal said it He actually said Pshat in Maseches Gehenim. I mean, has anybody ever quoted to you Maseches Gehenim before?
What is that?
Gehenim is what happens to where people go, where the neshamas go if the person needs
Hell,
hell.
Fires of hell.
Whatever hell is, you can take a look at the Shar Gamul for that. But Gehenim is where a person goes for being cleansed by Yisurim for his neshama, cleansed by Yisurim for having lived a life that he and done things which he wasn't supposed to do.
And HaKodesh for the Yerushalyim, right?
That's before.
I don't want to get involved in the details. I do want to. I would love to teach Shar Gamul, but Beregalachas, I'm not going to teach Shar Gamul because it's not. Anything that serious, you don't teach Beregalachas. Okay. I'm 1 foot.
Oh.
I'm very happy to. I'm very happy to teach it, but it's not just one class, and it's certainly not just. I'm not just giving you one. I'm not to give away the whole secret in one moment because. It's not one moment, it's a whole sefer. But anyway, in the Maseches Gehenim, it describes, among other things, what happens when a person is nifter, passes away. Then the Malachi Chavala, the
angels of
destruction, they come to the kever, to the grave after a person was buried.
With sticks of fire.
Well, they have chains. Chains. I don't remember. I don't remember. I didn't see it in the inside. I probably remember from how he said
torches
it.
And
but he describes chains. I mean, I seem to. The image I had was I still remember in America there were gangs of people go around with chains, right? So that I understood they had some sort of. I mean, everything. If you're describing angels, you're talking about something spiritual, but because you can't understand something spiritual, so you always describe something spiritual with something physical, because we can't understand anything except from the mashal. That's just our limitation.
What's mashal?
Allegory by the. In other words, I have to parable, or metaphor. Metaphor. That's a good word. In other words, if I want to describe something spiritual, I have to use a metaphor because it's not just you're not going to understand it otherwise.
You can't describe anything spiritual.
You can't describe it. So everything you say is that's why it talks about the hand of God and everything else, because we're talking about something spiritual and we can't describe it except by a metaphor. But
this shoe's almost up.
Oh, thanks for telling me. Okay, when you edit it, you probably find it's only 5 minutes of good material anyway. It doesn't really matter.
No, that was a good discussion, man.
No, so let me just finish this.
Yeah.
Finish Maseches Gehenim.
Correct.
So but with that introduction, that we're talking about something spiritual, which is being described physical, and how much of this is metaphorical, and how much of this is physically what happens. That's beyond, I'm going to find out eventually, but I don't know it yet. The Malachi Kabbalah go to the grave and they ask the deceased, "What's your name?" They ask him repeatedly, "What's your name?" Till finally he admits he doesn't know, and then they take the chains and they beat the grave and it splits open, and then the neshama comes out to go to the next stage of wherever it goes. And it goes, it beats the neshama until it breaks all the bones. So revolva. First, you said that's the reason why some people have a meaning to at the end of Shemona Esrei to say psukim in order to hint to their names in order to try to remember them. But he said the pshat that he said was that when they don't know their names, they don't know they don't know themselves. They don't know their strengths. They don't know their weaknesses. They went through an entire lifetime and they never figured out what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And it's like a repairman who comes in to repair anything, comes with a big toolkit, and if he knows what those tools are, he can do a good repair. And if he doesn't know what any of the tools can do, he might be physically prepared to make a repair, but he doesn't know how to use the tools that he's given. And a person who doesn't know his own strengths and weaknesses doesn't know what tools he has in order to be utterly Hashem, in order to do things in this world, and in order what to avoid, because he doesn't know his weaknesses. And a person can go through a whole lifetime without ever knowing that, and that's the obligation of a person to know himself. And Purim can be useful in coming to know yourself. That's one explanation I would give of why a person has to get drunk on Purim.